Hello, audience. Welcome to something a bit different from the usual. You see, it's been a while since, a thought has, passed through my mind. The idea that due to circumstances, and the vast magnitude of videos that we have collected over the years, a potential new viewer might be just a tad disheartened by coming here and seeing just runs. A very casual viewer might be, just okay with it, just very, very, freshly check it out on his own. But someone who may want to know more about who we are and what do we do, may be very confusing. Who are these people? Because I only hearing their voices. What is this SSMB they're talking about?
I mean,
So,
we have 435 subscribers.
and counting.
I assume there are probably some people who probably do
Well,
deserve a bit.
over time, we had some recurring people who had talked to us, like Commander General from the Prince of Persia franchise, for example.
Oh yeah,
But
and Kevin Cass in
I
several stuff.
noticed there's someone also very interested in Last of Us 2 part 2 run, so there's that. But anyway, on to the point, because this basically will serve as your 0 point. So I welcome you to SCWRM, a practical guide. All
Also known
right.
as Squirm.
Yes, I'll tell more in detail about origins later. But for first thing first, so who are these people involved? Because we are actually a bunch of people from all over the world utilizing, first using Skype and now Discord. Again, more on that later. To communicate and utilize that to our advantage for recording commentary over medias, mostly video games, movies, and series. So, since we are all over the world, I might as well actually tell who we are, starting with our quote unquote fearless leader, Jova. Go ahead.
Hello, Jova Hexion Joran Vexion here. Yes, my actual full username is a mouthful. My real name, of course, is Jason, which you may have heard from the likes of a certain David Cage game.
And keep pressing X while nothing happens.
Jason Clark Lewis. Yes, I have the names of Lewis and Clark in my name. Clark from my mother's side, Lewis from my dad's side. Of course, Clark is the middle one. Anyway, so, yes, as leader of this very here channel here, I come from a rather humble beginning of being just a random user on a site that we abbreviate as SSMB. We will discuss more about that in the history section. I had my start here and there. Funnily enough, one of the first members I met on SSMB was actually Teoskevin, and the second member I met was Dwibs. Both of which I had no idea how much I would have in common with them, seeing as how that was back in 2013. Oh, the earlier days. So, I'm an avid gamer here. I have many hobbies, ranging from go-karting to fencing. I have a deluxe love of animals as well here and there. And I like to feel that I live a carefree life, one that I balance while having to maintain time schedules here and there with a job here and there, college, which I have recently graduated from with high marks, so yay for me on that. And yes, I feel that I do my best in managing this channel and this site while coming up with creative and intuitive methods of maintaining our schedule and helping us find some of the most elusive material that we can get our hands on. It's not an easy job, but it is a fun job. So, for the next profile, I will leave things off to Teoskevin.
Alright, well, just like Jova said, that is my nickname. Well, Jova did mention that he's American, but as for me, I come from the land of Italy, let's just call it that because there are so many nicknames. The boot, if you want to call it that. But yeah, at first I was actually the only European in the group. Then basically the tables have turned, and now Jova is the only American here. Um, but no, I actually also am qualified, quote unquote, to be one of the founding members. But again, more on that on the history. I specifically hail from the city of Milan, which is in the north. I don't really represent much of my country aside from trivia stuff, mostly because I prefer to just hang around nowadays with people from other parts of the world. Not that the friends that I cultivated in my country are bad. It's just that in these recent couple of years there has been a shift in terms of how people think, and I start feeling less and less part of my country as time goes on. But my hobbies help me to keep a stable grip onto both where I live and the rest of the world, including this. I I have to admit I own a lot to this group and to this channel because my history on the internet and as a person has been terrible. Like, not in a sense of skeletons in the closet or like I secretly killed or doxed a person, but I have been very brash especially in the early years on the internet. Courtesy also partially on an education, quote unquote, from 4chan and the classic attitude of, oh, I can say anything on the internet and get away with it because I'm anonymous. But over the years, I do believe I did manage to mellow out. It's not a perfect thing, still working in progress, but I do believe I'm a better person than I was way before, and especially also when this channel started. So if you find something in the older videos attributed to me that might, have offended you, well, sorry. That I try to make it up to you. But instead, for IRL, I'm usually typical geek. I don't really collect stuff like the Funko Pops or the only action figures that I have are like one or two, and mostly centered around the main series that I grew up with, Final Fantasy. But otherwise, I just prefer to stick to video games, comics, But I actually don't these days parties. More recently, I actually have to. By the time we're actually making public this video, already be done to actually a toga party inspired by John Landy's masterpiece Animal House. So I look forward to that. But regardless, I'm actually enjoyed staying on this channel and learning a bit more how to speak and proper understanding English. This is also why my way of speaking is incorrect for the most part. I fuck up tense verbs, constantly, and the way phrases are constructed. Something that I notice late, post. And I still are trying to get better on that. But I do believe, staying here also helped me out. But again, more on that on the history. With that, I might as well leave it to the next person to present himself.
Is that me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you should use names. Come on, introduce me with my name too. Come on, do it.
You're about to. You're the only one who's actually using his own name as a nickname.
Although you used to be called P4.
For cause,
Technically, I still am. It's just that the only reason I used my an actual proper typical internet name is because I can't use my actual name. Because trust me, if I could, I would just register in everything in the internet as just Pedro because I don't really give a crap about internet names. I'm perfectly satisfied with the name my parents gave me. So whatever.
All right then. So, Mr. Introduce yourself.
Very funny. You're such a funny Brit, aren't you, Lips? But anyway.
Thank you.
My name is Pedro Duarte, and I'm Portuguese, and I'm the oldest here. Basically, all the others here are in their early 20s. I'm the old fart here. I'm 33 and a half years old. Yes. So yeah, I guess you can say I'm the token old guy here. That's so basically that's the basic gist of it. I'm Portuguese, and contrary to Teo, I'm much more blunt in the way I talk. Mostly because in the way I grew up, and because I grew up in a culture where I was always taught by my parents to just say what's in my mind, be honest, and not try to, mince words to just because people don't want to hear what you might want to say. And that's why I'm unlike Teo, who's much more careful, like he just said when it comes to video. I'm much more blunt about things. That's not to say that that's not to say that that I can't bend my tongue when necessary. It's just that I'm much more. How should I put this? Like it's I don't have as much fear of offending people because I still believe that people have the choice of not being offended by everything that gets told to them. But aside from that, yeah. So you have to understand that if you have been offended by something that I've said in the commentaries, you also have to understand that I come from a different background than most of the people here. So you have to keep that in mind because I'm not going to go into over details about the culture I grew up in because that would just draw this out. Let's just say the culture I grew up in is a different one than the other four here. So keep that in mind when you hear what I say. So that's the basic gist of it. As for the rest, did I miss anything too? Was there anything else?
Well, who's your special someone that you mention from time to time?
Yes. You might have heard sometimes me mention someone named Vanessa. Vanessa's my wife. She's the love of my life. And I've been with her since I was like 25, I think. For like I don't. I'll have to look up the date now because it's been a long time.
Don't forget your anniversary days, Pedro.
Teo, your joke would imply that Vanessa doesn't forget them either. So
that's adorable.
Just don't ask me to remember.
No, we don't really give a crap about anniversaries. We're going to be honest with you too.
Like, every day's an anniversary.
Our families and friends will message us saying, "Oh, happy anniversary," or whatever, and we're like,
"Right,
okay,
it was today."
Cool, thanks.
Okay, cool, thanks.
No, it will be like this too. Like Vanessa will get reminded of something, one of these special dates, and she'll go, "Oh, okay," and then she'll go back to playing video games. So it's not like like no. We're much more chill, as demonstrated. There you go. See, but there you go, audience. The fact that I even saying this shows you how I'm a bit different. So, but about it, yeah. When it comes to other things I could mention, I don't think I mentioned anything else, do I?
Two very minor things. Like I mentioned in the description of some videos when you might found particularly beat 'em up, but occasionally, if there's co-op to be had, Pedro usually gets helped by his brother.
Yes, my brother. Well, there's not really that much to say, really. I have a younger brother, and he loves video games as well. And sometimes when we play video games together, and so whenever I need a co-op partner to play a multiplayer game with me, I usually call him. So that's
his help is appreciated. And the minor thing, although like it's not that much relevant anymore, but your dog Nina.
Oh, that my dog. I have a dog. Yes, she's female, and she's actually old, really old by this point. She's 14. You don't have to worry about her at this point. Unlike a couple years ago, you had to worry. Maybe there might be some kind of worry that she would bark.
Oh yeah, she used to.
But nowadays, all she does is sleep.
Oh,
like this is basically her daily. She barely even eats, by the way. Like she doesn't even like most of the time eating. She eats enough. Don't worry. It's just that she's just so bored with life apparently by this point that she doesn't even bother to eat. Here's her daily routine: she sleeps. Then when she wakes up, she gets up, picks another spot, and then sleeps again. Do rinse repeat. Do rinse repeat. No, trust me, Shiroi. Old dogs are boring. All they do is sleep. Like.
But yeah, that's basically just for reference if you stumble on one of the older videos and you hear it.
Alright, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, next up in the line is our token female member. No, sorry.
Female member.
The stage is all yours.
Hello, I'm Shiroi, or Kitty, the former being a nickname I was given, the latter being one I chose. It's a bad pun. I am a tea-drinking cat mom, currently without any cats.
Oh.
I would like some cats, but yes, currently without any of those. I'm one of the two British members. I'm from Wales, specifically. Sometimes I get confused for being English, at least in voiceover.
Well,
My
Shira,
accent.
maybe it would help if you'd said "mun" at the end, here and there.
Yeah, mun and tidy.
That's stereotyping, bro.
Yeah, come on, embrace your heritage.
I'll
I need
admit,
to.
The land of your father.
I've always wanted to ask this, but
Yes.
is the Shiroi username based off of some Welsh pun?
No, it's not. It's the Japanese. It's a Japanese word, and it was actually given to me because I have albinism, which, for those of you who don't know, means I'm blind and pasty as all hell.
Huh.
So,
Fun
Yeah,
fact,
that's actually a
Shiroi
good
is
thing to
actually a
mention.
city in Japan.
That's actually is a good thing to mention because most audience might not understand why you actually need a bit of time to actually read a text that is on screen.
and and sometimes why people take over text from me. I'm visually impaired, so yeah,
That's all you need to know.
yeah,
Basically.
like that's pretty self-explanatory, honestly. But
And now you
Yeah.
know why we occasionally call her our blue eyes white dragon.
that's actually that it's not the username, but it's my Tumblr display name. That is at least. So,
Nice.
but yes, apparently my accent is a bit more noticeable IRL. But yes, for like in context of the group, I tend to be the one who makes pretty frequent references to obscure media that most people probably don't care about. I am I'm basically the platformer slash indie game enthusiast, I guess you could call it.
Well, it is for you that I discovered Undertale.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
And I got actually to discover Helltaker first from her. I potentially might have viewed it later on, but I noticed her avatar first. So there's that.
Yes. But outside of the group, I tend to wear my interests on my sleeve, like in terms of but I tend to reference things a lot outside of the internet as well, which is probably pretty bad. I cosplay. I go to conventions. I yell a lot about the things I like. I'm also a K-pop fan. Without the fan cams, don't worry. I don't do that. So I'm not one of the annoying ones, I guess you could call it.
Neat.
But outside of my more nerdy interests, I guess, I suppose I should also clarify a couple of things that you'll hear me talk about, or name rather. Alice. Alice is my girlfriend. Been with her for about as long as this group's been around.
Ooh.
Yeah. And to also reference another guest, I do call her a guest because she appeared quite frequently in our commentaries up until this year, Mena, who is my mother's dog. She you probably wouldn't have heard her in a lot of our recent stuff because I moved out of my parents' house at the beginning of the year. So yes, Mena won't be joining us anymore, unfortunately. But I thought I should honor her anyway.
There's also another name that was present in the early years, but now not anymore. The other pet that you had.
Oh, Valentine. Yeah, I had a cat who did sadly pass away, but it's fine. It's been
Well, it was
like,
for
it's-
old age, wasn't it?
no cancer.
Oh, okay.
Damn.
So yeah, so I didn't put a downer on this, but
No, to be fair, Shiro, me and the others, at least for me, I discovered this the hard way, and I felt so bad
Yeah.
about
no,
it.
don't worry about it. It's fine. But it has been quite some time since then. Now I'm doing fine. So yeah, everything's fine. And unless anyone wants to remind me of anything, I think that's me covered for this.
No, pretty much.
So-
Alright.
I would like to just mention real quick, because I actually did. There is actually one thing about me that I forgot to mention that I think probably would help. Because I do mention it sometimes, and I even use it in Ace Attorney Free as a way to guide how a certain aspect of that story was done wrong with a specific character that I voiced in Ace Attorney Free. Basically, everybody, my professional occupation. I'm a head waiter. I'm a head waiter at my family's restaurant. That's why you heard me complain a lot in Ace Attorney Free's case free. Let's just say. Because let's just say a lot of the shit in that restaurant was all wrong. But that's I'm a head waiter. Because I actually work at my family's restaurant, you know, like, and I actually, and from an early age, when I graduated high school, I had a choice to either, like, I didn't have that much in terms of wondering, like, and the first thing that I did was just try what I thought would be good. I would be good at. The first thing I saw was that, like, I happen to really like the environment in my father's restaurant, so I just decided to try to learn a bit more and see how things were. Eventually, I ended up really sticking to it, and I really enjoy doing it. So I just decided, you know what? Fine, it's just here, and I might as well keep this because I genuinely like doing this. So basically, that's how it was. So when you hear me complain about someone putting a plate on a table badly or something like that, like
he knows what he's talking about, folks.
God,
By the way, thanks, Hino, for having Ari and Miracle Mask deliver the tea properly.
It's attention to detail.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because that reminds me, I forgot to mention a big aspect of myself, too.
Sure.
I would also like to mention one thing.
That's it for me, then. Go ahead.
Jova first, because you were also the first.
One thing that has come up a lot is that I am an avid musician / singer / potential actor.
Your entire family is involved with music stuff.
I have had some acting bits in some abridged shows as, you know, extras or main actors across the internet, some of which have not been as big or as noticed, but, you know, here and there. But yes, I'm a big acting buff who really is hoping to make it big here and there. And as you may have heard, I'm also an avid musician. I have contributed with the saxophone on several accounts for some of our playthroughs for gags or actually legit performances. And yeah, I'm pretty good at singing, as I showed off some of my singing chops when we sung Eternity, among other things.
But anyway, as for me, instead, my quote-unquote profession, well, it's a bit difficult at the moment, especially because it's not something that's very recurring. You know, in other countries of mine, they actually have a specific way of saying, like OSS, which is basically in the healthcare sector. Basically, if you got your grandpa who needs someone to keep him company and you are too busy for work, I'm the person you should be calling. These interns allowed me to study medicine and psychology to some degree. Not on a doctorate level. Keep that in mind for every time is mentioned. My opinion is only reflective on a surface level. You still will need a proper opinion from a person who actually went to study his ass in university about the subject matter. But I do believe I have, you know, at least of a basic knowledge to understand. It also helps that I'm also fascinated on my own by other, you know, minor stuff like psychology and philosophy, but only on a personal, hobby level rather than actually studying it, because my profession for studying it has been just for the healthcare sector. But basically, assistant from a nurse perspective. That's what you need to know.
So basically, folks, now you know why Pedro is incredibly critical of restauranting, and you know why I'm critical of acting and singing and music stuff especially, and why Tio is especially critical of stuff regarding, well, medical stuff. He had a field day with our Patch Adams commentary.
I forgot if I told in the actual commentary, they did show that movie to me at the school that I attended for that profession. So, and I actually went to the teacher and was like, lady, like, I'm respect, as a teacher and all, but that movie kind of wasn't. I kind of basically had an argument that could have easily expelled me, but the teacher was actually very understanding.
You did it for the integrity.
If I may also.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Since my profession actually does tie into some things you might hear me say during commentaries. To mention The Last of Us 2 LP specifically, we started off by going through the accessibility settings and what they mean. This is something I actually test for as my profession, accessibility. Not for video games, but general web accessibility. And
Cool.
that's why you'll hear me complain about that in video games, because video games tend to be a bit not great.
Inaccessible.
I'm trying not to say shit, but yes, inaccessible.
I thought inaccessible would be the most appropriate.
Yes,
word,
yes,
maybe.
it is. But
basically,
some of the
Shuri,
stuff just makes no sense.
So basically, sure, your profession is literally testing to see how accessible stuff is, pretty much.
Yes, I yell about this IRL and I yell about this in video games, so I thought I should mention that because it is actually relevant to things I say in our videos. But that is officially me done with my profile.
Which leads us to our last person here, Dweebs.
Yes.
Hello there, my name is Dwibs. Although, as the years have gone by in the group, I'm learning that I might actually be Shiwari if life turned out differently. I'm from England, so I'm the other Brit in this group. I am also apparently the second tallest out of all of us in terms of height.
Still the first.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
My life is so fascinating. I come from, I won't get too specific here, but I'm from the Midlands, aka the that section in the middle of England that doesn't give a shit about the north-south divide. I.e., say the Britpop wars of say Oasis in the north and Blur down in the south. Us Midlanders probably will just go either both or neither. Now, as for my occupation, I don't really have one right now. I was a volunteer at a charity shop, but since March I haven't been able to go back because of the pandemic. And they don't want volunteers to get caught.
Yeah, for risky situation.
Any specific things I could mention, guys?
Well, I can tell you that from experience. I can tell that you are our resident film and series guide for the most part, at the very least.
Yes, specifically British shows, since they're a lot. British shows are a lot easier for me as a Brit to digest, simply because most British series are far shorter than American ones. I'm also just like Shiori. I am also someone who likes to bring up facts that not many other people would know of, except I'd argue mine are even more obscure.
Well, you were the one who discovered Little Witchy Mischief and Unholy War.
Yeah, I know. I just randomly came across it when I was looking up what Toys for Bob did in the lead up to Spyro Reignited.
Well, Dibs, I discovered Marco's Magic Football, so I also have my share of obscure.
I think every one of us had for
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah. Unlike Shiori, I am not a fan of K-pop or J-pop.
You're missing out.
Dweebs basically is the least weeb of us, and as such has to be bullied for eternity as a result.
Yeah, I don't cosplay, although I've been thinking about maybe doing it if I had more money.
Oh yeah, cosplay can be fun.
And even
It
then,
is
I'm not
indeed an
really...
expensive hobby, though.
Yes,
No,
very
it is an
expensive.
expensive hobby.
And even then, I'm not sure about doing it in conventions at the minute. Not just because we can't at the minute because of the pandemic, but also because I'm not exactly a very outgoing person. Not to say that I'm stuck in my house all day. I do go out to town with some of my friends and some cities whenever time and money allow. But other than that, not really. I am also a big football fanatic, and I say football as in real football, not men dressed up like Michelin, but everybody go around with something that doesn't even look like a ball.
AKA Dweebs being salty about my country's take on football.
Well, I do believe these actually provided us an advantage. For example, without that, I wouldn't have actually discovered how more intriguing the plot of the FIFA the Journey games, more even maybe applied to the recent ones have been.
True. Very true.
Yeah, because there's some parts that I might get as a Brit or an Englishman specifically, but to everyone else, it's probably not that well known. Like Tio mentioned earlier, I do like watching films, mainly ones from around the modern era, but I also do dive back into the old times, like some films from the 60s, such as the Bond movies of the time, and one Alfred Hitchcock movie, Psycho, in case you're wondering. Which is funny because that was at the very start of the 60s.
In general, like, while you seem to be more knowledgeable of the era from, like, say, the 80s onward, for the older ones, it's basically instead us telling you.
Yeah, pretty much. I am also somebody who just generally dives into stuff without reading source material, because not that I should have to, anyways. And so I'm that kind of guy who asks all the others, "Who's this guy? Why is he doing a merry dance?" and so on and so on. Anything else?
Well, no, yeah, we're pretty much. Well, you didn't told your real name if you want to.
Dwayne. That's all.
Like
I'll
that,
say.
like that kid that dances in the popular GIF. So there's that. Before actually going to the next section, shout out to our 2.5 major guest star that you have seen from time to time. First of all, he's a member that's not with us anymore, Darkstar. He was one of the founding members. We'll tell a bit more about him later. Essentially, at some point, we had some not necessarily just creative differences, but he felt like he wanted to go on his way, and so we just departed very peacefully.
Bit more on that in the history.
He was a fan of anime, like Revolutionary Girl, Utena, sorry, and particularly the Castlevania series. Some of our old stuff, like Getsu Fumaden and the Castlevania games, at least until the point of his recording, were done by him, actually.
I actually have him to thank for the fact that I recognized that Getsu Fumaden was getting representation in Smash Ultimate.
He was actually more active in the early years, but gradually, his impossibility to come in, has piled up. But that's pretty much it. We still actually talk with him from time to time, so he's just fine. Our first major recurring guest, the one that popped out the most, is Digimon from Blue Zone Comms. So link in the description. You might see this sentence again in the near future for the Gears of War 4, I think, playthrough coming up.
Yes, we've had quite a few other guest stars here and there, but those will come up more so around the history.
No, the only last one that I want to mention after Deji is just Pixie. Basically, she's very sporadic, but it's one that I think we have known since the early years and has been, chill in showing up from time to time. But anyway, with that out of the way...
I think it's important to mention, for the sake of information for the viewers, that Pixie is actually a member of the development team of the Freedom Planet series.
Oh, sure.
So that actually is relevant, because so she is actually a video game developer, indie developer, so she has actually some nice knowledge about the industry, so she's useful in video game playthroughs in general. So,
Yep. Of course, because
she
of
may
it,
sometimes appear in RE3 stuff still.
Yep, that too. She is very much a busy bee, so she doesn't show up as much as she used to, but, don't count her out entirely.
Anyway, with that out of the way, I guess we can start with the next section.
Right.
A more comprehensive history. This is because it's also part of a reason why I suggested to do this kind of video. Part of our history is missing. It's kind of like the DC universe after Crisis on Infinite Earths in a kind of way. Because our origins in that kind of sense are shrouded in mystery. We just simply, the first thing you will see majorly popping up is our Beyond Two Souls, run. But there is stuff that we did before, and also a bit in between, but that's the dumb bit content session will be for later. But how did everything started? With a thread on the forum that was the Sonic Stadium member board, aka the SSMB.
Yes, from across the internet there came quite a few members back in the day. For around that time, a member by the name of Princess Ganondorf, better known to us as Cody Lynx, was putting together a little posse or whatnot, out of sporadic want here and there. So, a few members were interested here and there, but in the end, there were mainly 4 members at the time. There was, of course, Cody Lynx, the then at the time leader, me, Jova Hexion, and Tiaskavin, and a 4th member, whose name unfortunately escapes me. Tio?
Chaos Truffle.
No. Cosmic Truffle was the replacement for that guy later on.
I actually don't know then. Gotta be honest, folks. Again, it was in 2008, the tail end of 2013, so my memory is very fuzzy.
So yeah, basically, yeah, like Tio mentioned, it was the tail end of 2013. I was actually first starting out college around that time, go figure, working on an associate's degree before I would go into a much more advanced bachelor's degree and hopefully later a master's. So it was interesting finding how to balance stuff out here and there. That said, though, at the time I was a gamer, but not as big a gamer I am thanks to this channel here and there. So, there we were, starting off our channel here and there.
As for me, well, at the time, I was already utilizing Skype. Yes, our first method of utilizing things was Skype.
Yep.
I was using Skype already for playing D&D, Dungeons and Dragons online with a couple of friends. So I was already used to, just voice conversations with other people, but not entirely an English format. So when I saw the thread on the SSMB, I was already like a year subscribed at that point. I was like, well, why the fuck not? It was literally just a spur of a moment thingy. But yeah, and the rest is almost history, but I have to say that the first couple of at least months were not entirely pleasant for me. At least that's what I was recalling. As you can imagine, just in true tradition of, it seems to be like a curse, that every person that wants to start a YouTube quote-unquote career is condemned to have its early years to be the most chaotic, troubled, experimenting with stuff. The quality is low. You do more mistakes, you do more bluffs. Sorry, not more bluffs, but fluff that could potentially be edited out in terms of potential pauses. The quality of your equipment is not good enough. So basically here we were like 5 people from all over the place, like 4, mostly Americans and me from Italy.
Actually, I think it was only 4 of us at the time when we
4
started.
or 5, I forgot. But still, like this bunch of people on Skype having mics that were not even that optimal, trying to experiment just something for the sake of fun. Our very first video, that thing I actually remember, was a test that we did, not made public as far as I recall, but was a test on the pinball section of Sonic Adventure that included the Knights.
Which was recorded by me.
And since it was a test, it was very cringe-inducing in hindsight. But again, early years, more forgivable, at least on my part. But we did actually try to get the hold of things. As I said, both years were the months were a bit chaotic. I remember distinctly, without making too much details, but at one specific point, I actually was on the verge of quitting entirely. It was like, well, yes, but I'm not having that much fun. But Jova actually went out and actually, catch me back in with the arrival of one of our very first guests that unfortunately could not stick around, Gab's girl. Yep. This was another USSMB user, another girl. I think she's also from the UK. Forgot. But
I think she said she was Dutch but moved to Britain.
Okay, thank you. But she did stick around for a while, but unfortunately she couldn't be, after that. We tried to get in contact with her, but unfortunately she is way too busy, especially these days. But it was like the spark that I needed to actually get back.
Yeah, a bit of context for that. Our first ever fully recorded playthrough was, of course, a recording of Sonic the Hedgehog 1, released in April of 2014, which is why we consider April sort of our anniversary month. Cannot remember the day that playthrough was released. As to why, we'll get to that eventually. But yeah, that was essentially our first playthrough. So, of course, the next thing we went to was Sonic 2, here and there. So, okay, so things were going all well and fine. Then we ran into a bit of a snag here. See, normally we would meet at, like, an appointed time. Preferably something like 2:30 or 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. My time date here and there.
For Europeans, instead, it was like dinner time, usually, basically.
Like Tio mentioned, he was the sole European at the time. That said, things started to get a bit iffy when our event at the time leader, Cody, and the other guy who, I'm sorry, his name escapes me, could not really make it that much often. In fact, it got to a time where that guy dropped off, so then Cody brought in 2 people to replace him. Enter in Cosmic Truffle and a friend of Cody's who would go on to be our 6th Ranger of the time. That's right, Cody was the one who introduced us to Darkstar here and there, upon which he was brought upon. But yeah, like Teal mentioned, even still, we kind of needed the whole team here and there. Unfortunately, Cody was sort of showing up a bit infrequently, which caused the group to run into a bit of a snag. Didn't help that I, as the main video editor at the time, kind of had to pester him for audios here and there, and he wasn't always getting them to me ASAP, which unfortunately hindered our production at the time. So, you would think that things would start to go down from there, but no, I came up with a solution. If we couldn't do our normal team stuff here and there, why not make different playthroughs? Stuff that would require different teams to happen, so that then we could have production come up. And, ladies and gentlemen, that is where one of our big series that we come back to every now and then is.
This starts some hilarity that is being brought up some time occasionally, but I do believe it's time to actually go full disclosure. See, at the time, we didn't have proper recording equipment like the Elgato, potentially capture recorder cam or something like that.
I just had MSI Afterburner at the time in my computer.
So, of course, we had to resort most exclusively to emulation. So my thought process was like, okay, what are the easier things to emulate without having the PC that I had at the time, the oven, as I used to call it, actually burn down. GBA and Nintendo DS, perfect. There's a huge catalog of things we can do, taking potentially some obscure things actually to work around. So, to start things off with games that you shouldn't have to think too much about it or to act too fast, instead, that will utilize, for example, the DS touchscreen, instead of having to input complex button sequences that, might require, not a bit more effort, but, might take more time to do. So, first thing first, 2 killer apps for Nintendo DS, Professor Layton and Ace Attorney. So I was like, okay, at the beginning I think I said, okay, I'll just record Ace Attorney. I don't remember exactly what happened afterward, but I basically had to drop it for some reason. And that's where Jova picked it up, instantly fell in love, and made it one of its main passion in his life. So basically, I am regretfully responsible for inspiring Jova's life's decision, which is a really bad thing because I am not qualified to be, a role model, to be honest.
Oh, it's not just me, Tio. I ended up introducing a few family members to it, and now they love it too.
God damn it.
Yeah, basically, Tio was the one who kind of introduced me to the likes of Professor Layton and Ace Attorney. Definitely more so, the latter here and there. So yeah, Ace Attorney was basically an ambitious project for us back in the day. It was going to be a lengthy playthrough, And at the time, stuff was kind of, again, getting a bit iffy here. Cosmic Truffle, a Canadian member of ours who Cody had introduced, kind of just dropped off. Like, he parted formally with us.
That's the sad thing. Most of the people that are not here anymore just up and disappeared. Like we don't really know where it happened.
Now, this factors a bit into how we came to have the group that we did eventually. But first things first. While Ace Attorney was also in development, I was working on one of my favorite playthrough of ours at the time, a commentary that you may recall as Sonic Free and Knuckles. It was arguably our old channel's most popular playthrough back before the Ace Attorney run, essentially.
Mostly because thanks to Skype fucking up, when I tried to actually put up talking about Blaze, I said the term that came up was instead demotion instead of dimension, and the others just ran with that.
It was also one of the best times where we found out about T.O.'s love for Sonic R and its music as well.
Yeah, that's also a good thing to mention. Side interesting to note, the SSMV, as the name suggested, is mostly used by Sonic fans, the Sonic community. It's actually one very old, ancient of forums, still active to this day, mind you. It's one of the pillars that still are active like that. The thing is, I'm not really a Sonic fan. I've played very little of the catalog of their games, and I quite frankly really suck at most of its gameplay. So why was I here? Is there again? Well, basically in 2012, while Sonic and All Stars Racing Transform was coming out or had come out, and DLCs in speculation was abroad, I actually stumbled into it while searching news about it and saw that one of the people of Small Digital was actually talking with the audience. So I was like, well, this plane seems to be cool. People are, I'll just have to adapt. Everyone's talking English, so I'll just have to, settle down. And I just stuck around. I gotta be honest. It's a community that's good for talking about other things other than Sonic, and I managed to, still be there to this day.
So, it's probably a good thing that we bring up SSMB, because SSMB kind of did help this group keep afloat for a bit. See, Sonic Free and Knuckles started with, basically me, Tio, Cody, and Darkstar as the members commentating on it. It would end with me, Tio, and Darkstar because, unfortunately, by the end of that run, even our former leader, Cody, kind of fell off the map here and there. It kind of got to a point where, at some point when we had our current lineup, when he would finally get back in touch with us, and we would officially just part ways here and there. Yeah, not exactly the happiest of stories, but hey, from his initial idea, this group did arise, and I will credit him for that here. He did kind of abandon it, but whatevs. Nobody's perfect. So, why do I bring that up? Well, around the time when Cody's appearances were getting more and more finicky, I came up with a good idea. Hey, guest stars did tend to have a knack to freshen stuff up, as I noticed when, I'd invited people like Gab's Girl to occasionally guest commentate with us. So, SSMB became a great reservoir of plenty of members who would guest commentate. I mean, it was chock full of Sonic fans, so we had a plethora of them to guest commentate on stuff like Sonic Free and Knuckles, and it happened that quite a few were also fans of Ace Attorney, so that helped out, including but not limited to Dr. Meccano.
Crowd the Bullet, I remember him showing up once.
The Prince of Bersia, as his username was at the time.
I actually don't know him.
And, of course, 4Cartridge, who,
Well, 4Cartridge is kind of like the ghost. It's kind of like Gaster for Undertale, because we really don't have actually a video with him. And even on the old channel, he recorded stuff with us. He actually volunteered to record Bioshock for us. But then he also just disappeared on his own, and the projects we were doing in him basically got retooled. So it was worth mentioning. But yeah, you will actually not have any particular videos with him right now.
Yeah. So yeah, again, so with the influx of guest commentators, things were going rather swimmingly here and there. So, after that, playthroughs were coming up on our channel, which at the time was CWR, which will later get renamed because...
Yeah, actually, that's a good segment, Rova. Who came up with the name and why?
It's
The
sort
answer
of a
to
mixture.
Sorry?
It's sort of a mixture between Cody, you, and me as to who
Actually,
came up with
yeah,
the name.
I basically at the first couple of meetings we were like, we actually need to come up with a name. At the time, I was like, well, it's 2013, new generation of console. But unlike people like Angry Joe, which back in the day was reviewing mostly Xbox 360 stuff, I was like, we gotta need to show that we're diversified. So kind of like a group of mercenaries, so the words console war regiment. I instantly regretted that because I thought later on that it was really stupid and very projecting in terms of a name. So Jova basically added the other two extremes just to mellow it out a bit and inject a bit of his love for pirates.
Well, Musketeers aren't necessarily pirates, but yeah, swashbuckling and all that. Basically, I came up with the idea to give us an abbreviation, and one that, of course, sounds like the word squirm, which is why our acronym is SCWRM, Swashbuckling Consular Regiment Musketeers, something that would sound way less overbearing, relatively comedic, and something that rolls off the tongue relatively well. That said, though, our old channel was still known as Consular Regiment. See, because I came up with a new name, I thought that we needed to kind of do a bit of rebranding here and there. We actually got a few new logos here from another frequent guest commentator of us, Red Helsey, also known as Marcos, who's also from Portugal as well. Yes, he is responsible for our current logo and some of the newer ones as well, too, yeah.
Credits to the other artists very quickly. The first one that did potentially our avatars is a friend of mine, Italian, Sara-chan. The second one, who drove instead the first commission and then later on me ask variants, is
Yoshi Unity.
Thank you. Yoshi Unity, also from the SSMB, good artist. Check his DeviantArt and other sites,
He is the one responsible for our full body avatars that you see.
And lastly, the group picture that you usually see at the end of most of our runs, is instead done by another friend of mine, Dama Shion, or Sophia, as she's called. So basically, that's all you need to know. You may occasionally see more recently a variation of my avatar done by a different person. I tend to actually ask it for personal usage, but this person is Clinic. Again, link in the description for him. Does commission, he doesn't bite, so request really to him. He's a fan of Fate, so it should be up your alley.
So yeah, with all that in mind, yeah, things are looking on the up and up. But yeah, our old channel, which you may recall was Console War Regiment at the time, was... well, it was very much a prototype channel on our stuff. Yeah, it had its fair share of subscribers, and we were a bit afraid that we would miss out on those subscribers if we made a new channel. That said, in the long run, considering how our subscriber count now dwarfs what we had back then, no regrets. Essentially, we would sort of migrate a lot of stuff to this newer channel, while we would use Console War Regiment as the main channel for, hosting some of our older stuff. Maybe some Raws here and there.
Part of the migration also happened because we tried to comment on Sonic X, only that instead of doing audio commentary, we tried to do the full thing, and predictably we got axed by a strike.
Yeah, we were a bit more naive back then. Alas. Well, then again, to be fair, that was back when YouTube wasn't nearly as much the police state as it is, but now it's not the time or place to make a video about the history of YouTube's downfall. That would take hours upon end. But yeah, so, as you're wondering as to how this channel came to be, this is how it is. The SCWRM channel, the official Swashbuckling Consular Regiment Musketeers YouTube page. Even made a Twitter page and a Facebook page to go with it.
Well, for the Facebook page is mostly inactive because no one really bothered to check it out. And the Twitter, I don't think anyone is actually taking care of it. Especially because I personally have a policy of not using Twitter at all. So anyone else have to do it. And long story short, we're actually very busy people. So we're not really active for potential social media, but we are still, hoping to respond to comments and if someone wants to talk about it. So still try to do it. We'll find the time potentially to answer you.
Even
But
if you do
that's
have
still not all,
requests.
Joe, because, oh god, I forgot exactly how it happened. Well, okay, no, it didn't happen immediately. So first of all, you actually need to introduce what essentially became our current team.
Okay, so yeah, our runs were going good, Sonic Free and Knuckles was starting to garner some popularity, and our Ace Attorney run was really good, especially when we got the idea of cross-promoting and showing stuff off on, SSMB, So we did figure at some point, though, that we needed a bit more of a beefier roster, since at the time it was just me, Tio, and Darkstar. And Darkstar would sometimes be a bit sporadic with his appearances here and there. Ladies and gentlemen, this comes around the time where a certain movie has to come into play as well. Because, God, it was around this time where I was on SSMB, and in a forum page, I met this user by the name of PPPP, or actually, as he was called, David Cage at the time. I had no idea what was going on at the time, but he presented...
Let me just interrupt for a minute so I can explain what the hell that means.
Go on.
Thanks, everybody. I don't know if they still have that, but back in those days, SSMB allowed you to temporarily change your username.
Yes, you
They
can.
still
You have
do.
a limited number of time, but I do believe it's very generous.
Yeah, and sometimes I would change it, like a lot of people did, like just for the lols.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was just feeling very
Role play.
role playing, and I was just kind of basically what happened is someone on that topic about that movie that Jova is mentioning. Don't worry, he'll get to it. This sounds exactly like if it was made by David Cage. So I intentionally changed my persona to a David Cage persona and reply to that person in that specific way, saying, "But don't you see, putting aliens in this franchise is what I've always wanted to do. It is brilliant." So that's the basic gist of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this PPP guy, who we would later come to know as P4, seemed like an interesting guy. I'd also noticed him and Tio discussing matters like a certain Final Fantasy game by the name of Lightning Returns on the Final Fantasy thread.
Yeah,
We already had started discussing stuff like 13.2 back in the day, but I had to admit, at the time I wasn't really paying too much attention, so it took me a while to actually realize that Pedro and that user were the same person. When it came to voice and all.
Yes.
Yeah. Why do
Hey,
I?
everybody, there's a quote-unquote Lightning Saga topic that I think I was the one that created it, even, or maybe if it wasn't. I remember being there from the beginning, but I'll have to look it up. But and it was kind of this small group of people that were constantly talking about the trilogy in general. And Zero was there from the beginning. I was there from the beginning, and that's kind of how things got started, kind of.
So, yeah, why do I mention this? Well, because Pedro would end up being one of the special guest commentators for Ace Attorney. Yeah, while Sonic Free and Knuckles and Sonic X at the time, before our videos got taken down, were kind of our main means of guest commentators, Ace Attorney was no slouch either. That said, Sonic-wise, we also had one of my special friends, Chaos Incarnate, who surprisingly has resurfaced on SSMB quite recently. It's nice to see him. But yeah, Pedro first appeared in our original Ace Attorney run. Yes, I do mention our original Ace Attorney run. Don't worry, folks, that'll get explained later too. So yeah, he was a guest commentator, and he actually ended up being one of our most common guest commentators, to the point where we were potentially discussing maybe adding a new member to the group. Gee, I wonder how that turned out. But it doesn't stop there. See, another guest commentator would show up. I forget if this was... Now, this one was actually from Sonic X. This was a user who happened to be new on SSMB at the time, while I was scoping for guest commentators. But, you know, she seemed like a nice girl. She went by the name of Shiroi UK-chan.
I fucking hate that name.
Yeah. That's right, Shiroi. You first came with us on a commentary for Sonic X, if I do recall correctly.
Yes, I did. You'd only just started the first season. I think you were already a handful of episodes in at the time.
Yeah, pretty much, yes. And she ended up being a rather common recurring guest commentator as well, to the point where she was even so
Also an
eager-
Ace Attorney.
Yeah, I know. In fact, yeah, we kind of ended up introducing her to Ace Attorney via that. So, yeah, basically, long story short, amongst our guest commentators, we noticed that Pedro and Shiroi happen to be some of our more common ones. So, wouldn't you know, eventually, me and Tio discussed. We discussed with Darkstar as well. We asked the two, and voila! Our new roster was made. It was me.
It was kind of like the Exiles for Marvel.
Yeah, I know. So there I was. Mind you, at this point, it wasn't even completely official that I was the leader because for all we knew, Cody was still somewhere in the wind. But, you know, drastic times called for drastic measures. So
There's also the fact, audience, that one thing that at the time, you know, was you know, more noticeable than now is the fact that at the time I wasn't, you know, there to take much action. Despite the fact that Jova had still picked me up, you know, I wasn't, for lack of a better term, really into it. I was there actually still to have fun, but I wasn't actually paying too much attention, for lack of a better term.
yeah, things
Yeah.
would
So
eventually...
Jova basically, when the opportunity presented, Jova basically decided to be the leader, and I really didn't have any objections to that.
Yeah. Things would start to pick up for you around the time we started our Justice for All original commentary. But yeah, but that still leaves us with one puzzle piece left for the original team lineup. So there we were. Me, Tio, Shiroi, Pedro, and Darkstar at the time. Darkstar would occasionally show us some rather random stuff here and there. Stuff that could be rather appealing and well here and there. Granted, his tech wasn't as much up to snuff. See, at the time, we were actually upgrading with tech. I went from, you know, a cheap $20 speaker set of headphones to, well, a much more quality-sounding headset, as you can probably tell. I mean, God, I don't even have those old audios, but trust me, those were like...
If you want an interesting tidbit, the closest thing probably is the original Time and Eternity run, at least the first couple of parts. But
Yeah.
In general, most of our older videos are full of that. Particularly also the first couple of movie commentaries, which are now almost unusable because we have already bad audio on its own, and also the movie audio bleeds in.
Like, it's to a point where some of them may be redone not just because they need generations, but just for the sake of better quality and us having, you know, better observation skills than we did back then. Yeah, I'll tell you, commentating was ironically harder than I expected it would be. It's not just as simple as, oh, looking at a screen and making some dumb jokes or whatnot. That can end up being something you will regret in the past. But, yeah, overall, things were on the up and up. But then, something interesting happened. So, at the time, Pedro, before we had officially solidified the idea of making him and Shuri members, had offered to record some footage for us, which would lead to, well, what we considered the start of Season 2 back in the day, but might as well now be considered the official start of this particular channel, the Beyond Two Souls run. Pedro, why don't you enlist the audiences to your first ever contribution to our channel?
Yes. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Unlike most people, I was introduced to David Cage not through Heavy Rain, but through Indigo Prophecy back on the PlayStation 2. And that game is still one of my favorite games of all time, just because of how hilariously terrible it is. It's a fantastic comedy. I would love to do a revisit of that game at some point. And it's just, and yeah, so at the time, when Beyond Two Souls was only like a few months old, because remember, it came out in October 2013. originally. So at the time, I was thinking, what like playthrough can I record that would be like a short enough thing, and like it's something because even before, to give you an idea, everybody, even before that playthrough, I already had streamed the game for friends of mine that I have, like some people on SSMB as well, and it was always fun to hear them react to the incredibly baffling plot developments. So I figured it would make for a fantastic playthrough for the channel, and one thing led to another.
So yeah, our Beyond Two Souls part was made, and that may be having some of my most oldest audio stuff. Bit of context, folks. Back in the day, not only were we using Skype, but we also had to use a special recorder to record stuff, and, well, okay, the very first recorder I ever used was quite a mess. It was SVR. It was what I could afford at the time. So here's the thing. SVR did not have the best quality recording. Well, it did have some good quality recording. The problem? It recorded game audio with it, which meant that when editing together files and audio, I had to match it up precisely. Otherwise, I'd have overlapping audio in the case of if I kept the audio of the video going, or I would have to line up the commentary audio perfectly because, well, yeah, then it would just sound way off here and there. Nowadays, we use OBS and Discord, which are vastly better.
It's still a bit tricky because we have to deal with also potential audio bleeding, but compared to before, there are ways to circumvent that.
Yes, for context, folks, when dealing with Skype, we had lovely stuff like server outages, having to change complete different channels, moving the entire party.
People dropping left and right.
And apparently, the fates deciding that based off of who was hosting at a certain time, whether or not we'd have a good experience. And
yeah, it was the Final Fantasy 13 of calls, because if the leader died, the entire party died.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah, it's like an RPG.
I will admit, while I do enjoy some of the antics, the whole audio skipping and cutting in is part of the reason why I would not be a mystery doing some of our older commentaries, which, didn't necessarily suffer, but you can definitely tell might have been better if we didn't have that. You already started
seeing some like Time in Eternity, but all in due time. Some of them have fate favoring us, like say Covering getting a remastered edition with full body, so stay tuned for future for that. But others, simply put, just had the promise that Jova mentioned, coupled with, our opinions potentially changing over time and giving a bit more, precise look.
So, speaking of quality rising, yeah, in our original run, sometimes we would have a bit of a rotation with who was involved with certain playthroughs here and there. See, back in the day, we were a bit more sporadic. Nowadays, we're more consistent with who will show up for each playthrough. But back then, usually as long as the person playing was present, we would often move on to press through and forward here and there. It had some benefits, but I kind of prefer what we have nowadays. That said,
You're still seeing a remnant of them in my Dark Souls streams. Basically, while Dweebs and Shiroi are sort of mainstays, I had the idea of the being a pilgrimage, so people will jump in and out as much as they want. I want to replicate that also in the future for stuff like the Banner Saga, but, speculations only.
If I recall correctly, I'm actually in one of those Dark Souls parts.
No, Pedro is.
Ah, neat. Anyway, speaking of rising quality, so with the original Ace Attorney run, the people most consistent there were me, Shiroi, and Pedro. Tio, I don't recall, but you weren't there as commonly for some reason. I think it was because you were more
time
busy
stuff,
with stuff.
And also this was also a bit of a shift because at first we started treating Ace Attorney just like any other video game, just talking over, but we did realize that the game was taking long, and there wasn't voice acting, wasn't much to say. So, Pedro, I think, had the idea, so the suggestion of, well, the game doesn't have voice acting, so why don't we just try to entertain the audience by, selecting roles for ourselves and voicing the characters.
There are plenty of Let's Players and even streamers that typically do
Yeah.
that when they're
Yeah.
recording a non-voice
And
game.
and being a lot more than say just like people like Game Grumps, which have only 2 people with similar voices going around. We had the advantage of voice difference, meaning that the variety in voices actually could grant more efficiency potential for this voice acting thing. Only problem was that at the time, well, I still do now, but at the time, I really hated my voice. In a sense that I'm okay the way I talk. I understand it, but the way when I listen, it's the classic case where when you listen to your recorded voice, you think, I don't sound like that. It sounds more cringy, And at the time, I didn't think it would sound good for stuff like that. It was only like way later on down the first recording of his attorney doing case 1-5 when I decided to actually take the role of my favorite character of the trilogy, Detective Dick Gumshoe.
Fun fact, actually, it was my suggestion that Tio play Gumshoe, mainly because, out of the people playing, he was the one who didn't have one. In fact, if I recall correctly, that was actually when you finally returned as, appearing more commonly.
Stably.
Which brings me to the introduction of our final member chronologically currently. See, during our Ace Attorney run, we were still having guest commentators here and there, but we happened to come across this British bloke who happened to be a pretty good fit for the judge. A Mr. Dwibs94, as he was called.
23.
23.
93.
Jova,
93.
I'm not 90. Jova, I'm not 97 years old.
Are you sure about that?
Yes. The 2 of you have seen me.
Yeah,
True.
that's actually a side note of us. The only me, Shiro, and Dweebs have actually managed to see ourselves IRL in like 6 years. I was planning on see them again in Cardiff this year, but stuff happened.
Yeah.
Stuff happened, yes.
So, anyway, this is where Dwibs enters.
Technical
So, we got
difficulties.
So yeah, this is where Dwibs enters the picture here, and I will say this, he had quite a lavish voice for the judge here and there. He first showed up while we were in the middle of Turnabout Goodbyes, and he first showed up on day 1 of the trial here and there, fittingly enough here and there. So yeah.
And why not? I was 92 years old at the point, so that voice was perfectly fitting.
So, Dwibs, why don't you tell the audience what convinced you to stay with us?
Well, I found it a lot of fun.
Pretty much.
And
That's basically the core philosophy here. Stay if you want to have fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
And thus, that brings us to basically our main lineup nowadays, here and there. So yeah, pretty much stuff went on the rise here and there. We would later go on to look for games old and new, projects very well known, and then projects obscure here and there, which would lead us to quite possibly one of our first big doozies. Time and Eternity. Boy golly, I will not forget the day Pedro showed up in my PM to show me that game. It's like
I said, I think in both commentaries, I actually knew about the game and actually was attempting to buy it, but I never actually see it in full motion, so this was actually an opportunity for me to, see how it is. And
boy golly,
what a privilege.
Was it everything you imagined?
And then some.
Yeah, basically, our old commentary is still up, but as you can recall, it was an experience for us. Even Shuri, who was only in part way because she was sadly sort of sick with a bit of a cold. I hope the game didn't make her more ill than it needed to.
I really don't like my initial reaction to Sanders' true form, so...
Yeah, as things were getting really underway in 2014, I also came up with the idea to help spice something up here and there. When we didn't have time for games, we could do, maybe, a movie commentary. As you can imagine, from the plethora of movies we commentated on, that idea took off. Hell, some of our movie commentaries are some of our most popular and most viewed videos, to the point where we even extended it to doing shows. And yes, folks, who are vying that we do school days based off of how loved our school days anime commentaries are, we hear you. We will get to doing the school days games at some point. Don't worry. Oh, don't worry, Sherry.
So ecstatic.
Don't worry, Sherry. The games are better based off of which ending you choose or how I play the game.
Well, they're visual novels, Jova. You expect that to happen.
Yeah. For those who don't recall, the School Days anime was essentially, as I described it, if a player went with the worst choices possible and made Makoto an absolute dickhead. To the point where it was...
I seriously
One's
don't
a
get
dickhead.
these. I seriously don't get these. Making an anime adaptation and choosing for canon the worst endings. Weird, but in itself, that anime series is still a miracle. But it's up. I have no idea why the bots haven't decided to strike us down. But there it is. It still happened.
So, but yeah, basically, yeah. So yeah, that was a thing that took off and was also one thing that helped really boost our popularity here and there. Obviously, I was not sharing the School Days anime stuff on SSNB because I did not want to get in trouble with the mods here and there. But yeah, basically, yeah, this is where our horizons really expanded and where everyone in the group was starting to contribute here and there. So things were on the up and up. Granted, our subscriber count was at a moderate bit, but it didn't seem to be rising quite as consistently.
Well,
And
one thing that I wanted to establish ever since our inception was to keep our expectations still low. Because many people who want to start YouTube actually want to aim at the glory, the monetization, the humongous amounts of subscriber going at fan convention and all, only to find themselves, falling flat on their faces, not understanding why, blaming themselves, and just generally spiraling down. So I wanted personally to say to the others, at least back in the day, to keep it focused just on having fun and not taking too much out of us, because otherwise, it would have just had us burned out at some point.
And that mindset definitely did help.
It also helps that most of the videos are still up despite everything that we'll mention in a second. So again, it's only basically a virtual test of time. I'm actually quite okay with how things are going. I guess people staying at home meant that more people were interested in us, and the magical YouTube algorithm had decided to have us shows up a bit all over the place. Fun fact, Jova, the analytic functions supposedly tell me that we're popular in the Southeast Asia sector. So,
how nice.
I don't really know your language, but I salute you people from India and onwards.
Thank you for that, indeed, yes. So yeah, from 2014 to 2015, that is essentially the start to this main lineup here. It was quite a wild time. So let's go to the mid-2015, because this is where something amazing / horrifying kind of happened
The
here.
Fire Nation attacked.
Yeah, see, our old SCWRM channel, we were kind of abandoning ship on that anyway. But this was around the time where YouTube had that mass-wide epidemic that was sort of hitting a lot of channels here and there, where channels were randomly getting deleted or ultra banned here and there.
Basically, audience, at the time, we were mostly focusing on the channel that you're using right now. So the others, I had the idea for us to use it as a storage device for our RAWs, the raw videos that we use as a base to commentate upon. Easy enough. We just put the video there, unlisted, so no one else really had to see them, and we utilize them and then do the finished product for the main channel. But for some reason, one day, me and the others just woke up and found that the previous channel was gone. No real explanation why, especially because at the time YouTube still had the policy of the 3 strikes and you're out. If you only had like 1 or 2, you will still have the channel and just the notification. But for us, it was 0 to 3 in one swoop. So it had to meant that someone had to flag multiple videos that were supposedly infringing copyright or the standards of a community, and YouTube was okay with this. The problem is that at the time, we really didn't have anything that could have violated. So to this day, we're still puzzled about what could have caused that. The closest thing that I could potentially imagine, and it's even a stretch because YouTube actually has plenty of videos unaltered about this, was the first set of RAWs for the first God of War game that I was recording back then. I was experimenting with 60 frames per second format, and they do contain boobs, some kind of nudity, minor nudity of some kind. It's actually very tame when you get down to it.
Problem.
So I thought, well, people might have do that. The problem was that the videos were unlisted and unwatched by anyone else. So, and as for the actual public videos, there was nothing supposedly that was infringing copyright. So I have no idea actually what happened.
And furthermore, even if it were the boobs, there are plenty of, boob exposing videos on YouTube that have not been stricken down. Heck, even on our own channel here and there.
Again, pretty much, it's another showcase of the fact that the YouTube algorithm and bots that it's using for monitoring is a flawed system. Don't get me wrong. I understand it that, there's a humongous amount of data uploaded every single hour on YouTube, not every single day, every single hour. So it is a monumental task to actually monitor everything and having to sort things out, people who want to get away with it, like scam, pornography, extreme violence, political hate, stuff like that. So I get the idea that employing bots is a better idea. The problem is that it's still a flawed system. And sometimes channels do get strikes out of nowhere, even when they don't deserve to. And if you're a big channel, like say Markiplier recently, which I had a video explaining about the subject matter, you're okay because you can just pop up on Twitter, telling, hey, YouTube, why this happened, and they will actually, understand the problem and restitute your channel with an apology. But if you're someone smaller, like us, you don't really have a chance, The fair use thing has got better over the years, for better or worse. It still has gone relatively better. The strike count has amounted now to 4, if I recall correctly. Now there's a warning system, there are several degrees on how YouTube handles copyright claims and strikes. We're mostly tied to making sure you are not monetized. So for us, for now, it's just fine, especially if we keep a low profile. But still, it was an occasion where it showcased that the system was flawed. Hell, I checked this the other day. Get this. At the moment, our first part of the Matrix Path of Neo, which lives record, is currently blocked worldwide because it contains footage from the movie. Never mind that the rest of the game contains also footage from the movie. So, which is it, YouTube?
I don't feel like re-recording the game.
No, it's not really worth it. But still, rant over, basically to say that that is why the old channel is gone, not to be recovered. Anything that was recorded there is gone, unfortunately. I tried actually using the Wayback Machine and it didn't work. So our first couple of runs, for better or worse, are now gone and unseenable, The closest you will see to our origin story, like I mentioned at the beginning, is Beyond Two Souls.
Yep.
But that's also why I decided to have this video going around, to tell the story that nobody knew, essentially, aside from us.
Don't worry, there's still some more to come, though.
But basically, now you know most of it, and you're put up to speed, basically. Aside from these major events, the rest is documented in some kind of ways on our channel with our several different runs, the movie commentaries, including the Generations redoing stuff, and the series stuff. But obviously, with this big amount of stuff that we did, there were actually a lot of stuff that we wanted potentially to do and couldn't do for one reason or the other. Dumb-it content as it is. This spans for a lot of things, video game, movies, and series. So I'm not going to do an entire list about it, but just for some quick example, there are movies that we did but lost the audios and we plan to redo in the future, like say Gods of Egypt, for example. But game runs we wanted to record, but for one reason or the other we had to stop or we lost footage and we need to redo, like say Jova's Shovel Knight or me with Okami, for example.
Also, the Bioshock run, and in regards to E3 commentaries, yeah, that's a thing. Starting with 2015, we did start E3 commentaries, but the Nintendo audio, unfortunately, got corrupted / lost. Fun fact, actually, the first time we did try an E3 commentary was our first year, 2014. Didn't go so well, needless to say. And yes, it is still our lifelong regret that we were not around to commentate on Microsoft E3 of 2013. The E3 with the Xbox One.
But basically, that's how it is. Nowadays, unlike one thing that we adopted over the years is a more ordered schedule in how we handle things and how we make things public. Before, it was just a matter of videos ready, put it there. The problem is that for some products, literal months or a year will pass before actual publication. And sooner enough, I realized that we were just accumulating stuff. So I basically did kind of like what the creator of No Man's Sky did after the complaint. I basically had to sort an entire list out, see what was there and what was not, and how releasing it. And thankfully, now we're in a position where we actually can catch a breath on that.
In fact,
we still have potential. We still have a minor redo list on the movie side, but again, it's not the priority.
Yeah, in terms of stuff, we do sometimes release stuff day by day around the time that we are recording it. We try to be more up to speed,
but we still try to keep a policy of 1 to maximum 3 videos per day divided on 3 raw lines, if you can actually visualize them. One, like in the middle of the day, one around night, and potentially if there's like a movie like in between the two sandwiched.
Yeah, so in case you're wondering why we may not immediately respond to comments given to us in the middle of playthroughs, that's often because the playthroughs, for the most part, are already pre-recorded. With some exceptions, like the 7 Remake playthrough.
Yeah, that's actually another thing. Aside from recent stuff like the 7 Remake, which we used to experiment, basically, most of the stuff is, we decide to make it public only when we're actually done with it. Meaning that, again, just like, for example, with Comrade General, who talked with us during the Prince of Persia games, it was stuff that we had already, gone through, or, we were potentially getting through, but it was still useful anyway.
By all means, we will definitely regard if you do give us good information, like a future game or wherever possible.
Yeah, just again, Jack, if you have questions of any kind, just leave a comment here.
Now, in regards to the history, I guess the other thing we should cover was when we had to redo some of our games, not because of broken footage, but because for the sake of simplifying stuff, let's just say something bad happened on our main channel here, and some of our playthroughs got messed up with here and there, including, but not limited to, some of our Ace Attorney and some of our latent playthroughs. Oh, fun fact about our latent playthroughs here. Originally, by the way, the duties of recording them mainly were taken over by Pedro. Not to any complaint here and there. Originally, while I was the one who would portray Phoenix Wright on the channel, Pedro would be the one who would portray Layton on the channel. And then, Pandora's Box happened. So, yeah, you remember how I said that Skype would screw us over quite a lot, to the point where sometimes nearly entire parts would leave one of us absent here and there? That kind of happened in the first few parts of Pandora's Box, so Pedro was unfortunately waylaid by Skype, so Dwib stepped in to play Layton, albeit a much nicer Layton than.
That's a blessing in disguise. I should have never. Had myself play Layton as anyway.
Yeah, turns out having an Englishman playing Englishman turned out to be pretty good casting.
Yeah, I know, right? And also, one of my personal favourite parts while doing the channel was morphing Layton into one of my little favourite fan characters.
Dick Layton.
Dick Layton, in case you don't know, how Professor Layton, the character, is an affable, polite, smart gentleman of a guy. Dick Layton, who in my head canon is the actor who plays Professor Layton, is, well, not. He's very rude. He's a womanizer. He constantly disrupts the set, just taking over it, being the director and producer. To the point where Level 5 had to ask Capcom to ask Phoenix Wright to make sure filming stayed on schedule.
Yes, to which
Even
my
though
Phoenix
even though
Wright
that's not his-
begrudgingly agreed.
Even though that wasn't his job. Yeah, even though he knew as much about his film producing as holding down a girlfriend.
Someone has to
But-
do it, damn it.
But yeah, that was that was actually one thing, forming up during the chaotic period.
Yeah, basically, around the tail end of 2015 and the beginning time of 2016, something messed with a few of our playlists and videos to the point where we had to redo some of them. In the cases of the Professor Layton ones, we ended up redoing Professor Layton 3. So, I believe we were able to include Teo that time around.
For like the latter half, I think.
And for Ace Attorney, our original run, it kind of got mangled a bit to the point where we had to redo the whole
didn't
thing.
help that the first attempt was so elongated in terms of parts that I distinctly remember every one of us arrived at the end and our final thoughts was like, it's too long at the end.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, in a way, I'm kind of thankful that I got to redo my original run of Ace Attorney because I was a lot better at pacing myself here and there and editing stuff up and down and all around here and there. Also a benefit here, better audio technology, and also our run was a lot more consistent. Like I said, our original Ace Attorney one was like literally one of our first ever ones, so it was where a lot of our nativity showed. While sadly some of our iconic guest commentators were lost here and there, they will still be remembered. That said, we got to have some great comedy show, and also we got to have the voice acting gimmick actually be a constant thing instead of something that sporadically began near the tail end of Turnabout Samurai and only really became something of a constant thing by, Turnabout Goodbyes' start here and there. Heck, it was to the point where we were literally scrambling to decide who would play who and who here and there. So yeah, essentially we got a much more brand-spanking new one, and best of all, we literally got to have it so that certain parts would line up with certain events here and there. Like, I actually had the first part literally happen on the date of the actual trial end day because, hey, it was 2016, and the first Ace Attorney game takes place in 2016. It was also a great time because in the year 2016, in real flipping life, a parrot was used as a witness for a murder trial.
Because apparently Shutakumi is a time traveler.
Yeah, like he's so much of a time traveler that over in Britain right now there are literally 3-day trials. Holy cow.
I'm not sure if those are still the case anymore, but yeah, for a while, because of everything that was going on, they did regulate things to the 3-day system, and yeah, that was quite amusing.
Yeah, we were copying Japan pretty much.
He also predicted that there would be a barrister who would become an attorney over in Britain at the age of 19, so kudos to him for that as well.
But yeah, I guess that pretty much covers it. The rest is stuff that you can find on the channel. I'll just release separately a very small companion video just done on my own that I will put in the movie playlist just to explain how we do the difference between our regular commentaries and the audio commentaries, because it might help with the movie stuff. But anyway, I think that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoyed our, well, I don't know how brief it might have been, but basically our history here, and I hope you can potentially stick around and see what's to come in the rest of this magical year and what's to come, especially because I want this video to be your reference, for the future. If you're a newcomer and actually being redirected here to learn more about us, well, you're welcome. Anyway, see ya.
Ta-ta.
See ya.
See ya.
Yeah.